Warning: this content may be upsetting or disturbing to some audiences. When she opened his trunk, she found the dead, naked body of her teammate. What's the most messed up thing someone has confessed to you in confidence? Especially the last story will hit you hard. Back when I was in high school, some kid I knew told me that he fantasized about shooting up the place all of the time. And that if he were to act on said fantasies, he would spare me and my girlfriend because he thought we were cool. Never looked at him the same way after that. But at least I knew he would never kill me, I guess. Now a bit of a backstory. We knew that my grandpa was born in 1922, so he would have been of age for the war, but my grandpa always insisted he never participated and tried to hush up our questions. Skip to him being pretty drunk one night when we went to visit my grandparents. My grandpa told him to go into the other room with him, and my parents were already going to bed and everything. I'm in grandpa's room and he pulls out a small chest and opens it, showing me a bunch of photos and old World War II Army gear, including his old helmet. I was pretty astonished as he never talked about that time. Out of nowhere he asked for my confidence and I said of course, safe with me. He starts telling me that he landed on Omaha Beach on D-Day as part of the 1st Infantry Division, or the Big Red One. He started telling me the things that he saw and I was terrified. Apparently, when he came off the landing craft, the door jammed and only went about halfway down, exposing the soldiers inside without letting them out. Some guys panicked and tried to go over the side, but were shot down. As the crew member was trying to fix the door, machine guns turned on the exposed landing craft and pretty much wiped out everyone on board. My grandpa went up and over the side with 2 pals of his, and successfully made it into the surf without being hit. At this point he started crying and he asked me if I knew what artillery does when it hits, and I said I guess. Him and his friends made it up the beach, miraculously, and onto a small bluff to take cover, but a shell hit about 10 meters away from them. It almost knocked my grandpa out, but when he started to recover from the shock, he realized that both his friends had been hit. He said that one of them was still alive, but had been cut almost in half and was squirming and slowly dying. The other friend, his best friend whom enlisted with my grandpa, had his face blown off and tried to speak, but only made inhuman and awful sounds before he died several minutes later. My grandpa was pinned, still trying to recover from the shock, and machine gun fire was heavy, so he couldn't go out to comfort or try to help his friends, so he had to sit there and watch them die. My grandpa started to cry uncontrollably and I just hugged him. I was absolutely terrified about what he had been through. I was only 12 to 13 at the time, but I understood why he didn't tell anyone. When he calmed down a bit, he told me never to tell anyone because that was his burden to bear. He was awfully drunk, but I think he truly meant that, so I haven't told anyone since. When I was in 8th grade, my friend confessed to me that her stepdad was molesting her. I told an adult, he was arrested. I don't want to give too much information, but he had started molesting her a few months before she told me, and I had gotten a creepy vibe from the guy. It began with prolonged hugging, tickling, and when he was arrested moved up to touching her breasts and buttocks. There was never any penetration. He was arrested, admitted everything, and plead out. My friend stayed with my family for a while. Years later, as adults, she admitted she was initially angry with me, but that she's grateful now. We are still friends on Facebook, and she has a very happy life. She overcame the poverty she was raised in, has a great career, and is in a happy marriage. I also wanted to make the point that part of the reason I felt comfortable going to someone was the relationship I had with my vice principal. I was part of a club she headed, and her treatment of me, and the way she helped build up my self-image and esteem made me feel both that I could trust her and handle any backlash I received from reporting the abuse. I felt I could talk to her about anything, and she was the person I went to with this. I encourage anyone reading this who is in a position to please take a lesson from this and do the same for other children and teens. You can save a life. My cousin told me her father, an over-the-road driver, picked her and her brother, ages 6 and 3, up to visit him for the weekend in his truck. He was pulled over and driving under the influence, arrested, and left the kids hidden in the sleeper part of the truck. This happened Friday. He came back for the truck when he got out of jail Monday afternoon. The kids were in the truck the whole weekend. This just happened at work the other night. We have a couple of new guys that my lead man and I are going to be training to sandblast on separate shifts until they get their bearings, and can go on their own on the 3rd shift we are opening. Now, first I'll tell you, sandblasters work in 2-man crews, in a separate building from the rest of the shops. Anyway, this kid I'm training started with us about 2 months ago, but then after a couple weeks, Disappeared for almost 3 full weeks without any explanation. Rumor had it that he'd been in an accident and was just out on short-term medical. I believed this, because he drives like a moron, and would have been happy believing that forever. He's not all that bright, and pretty much sucks at everything he does, except, it's turning out that he's pretty good at sandblasting from what we've seen so far, so there's hope, but we'll get back to that. So, I got curious on Wednesday night and asked what had happened, and he straight up told me, calm as can be, that his ex-girlfriend was supposed to come see him that weekend he disappeared, so they could reconcile, but her new boyfriend called him and said she didn't want to see him or talk to him anymore. Naturally, he was upset, as one might be, but instead of dealing with this, he proceeds to load a rifle, gets in his car and start driving a state away to go kill both of them. He was talking to his mom about it while it was all going down, and she called the police and they intercepted him about 100 miles into his trip and threw him in a mental hospital for 19 days. He just told me that like he was telling me about what he ate for lunch or something. All while explaining that he still has guns at home that no one knows about. Then, tonight, he leaves work early because he needs to talk to his doctor about the meds he's on because he's having bad thoughts. And they're going to leave me alone with this swag job for 2 weeks, overnight, operating very dangerous equipment. Sweet. When my daughter was about 2.5, her vocabulary began growing quite a bit and she started talking to me a lot more. One day we were laying in bed and she started telling me that her grandpa put his finger in her butt. I immediately felt sick. I still feel sick writing about this. To make things harder she is a toddler and I had a good relationship with my in-laws. She also says stuff like there are talking spiders and that she's a bird. So, I held it in and decided to keep her very close and pay very close attention. I began noticing other behaviors that make me worry more and more. Her vagina gets sore a lot and I noticed discharge. I couldn't risk my kid anymore even if this person was innocent. My kid is worth more to me than protecting an innocent person. I don't feel bad saying that either. So, I tell my wife what happened. Instead of getting support, she fights me on it. She defends him and says it's not true. We argue pretty much for a full day. Honestly, to this day, I can't forgive her for this. I really hate her for it. I get fed up and call Child Protective Services and tell them what's going on. We go and do interviews and they take my daughter and talk to her and examine her, and interview her mother and I. Throughout the entire interview between my wife and I and the social worker, she continually tries to discredit my daughter, my wife does, and they say my daughter didn't give them anything actionable. They went and interviewed my in-laws and their kids and about a month later it was over. I still feel like we've been failed. I feel like I failed my daughter. The worst part is that since it was officially cleared, we have to be associated with them still because in my wife's mind that means nothing happened. I die inside when I think about this stuff. I don't have any recourse, and any actions I could take now would be useless. I've seriously thought about making him go away, but then I would be leaving my kids alone in the world with their mother who, I feel, doesn't actually care about protecting them, based on how she acted. It's pretty much shaken my relationship to people in general. I don't trust anyone. I don't want anyone near my kids. I don't even like it when they're out of my sight. It's made me paranoid beyond belief. I've even had crazy thoughts like maybe my wife is in cahoots with my in-laws in some sort of crazy incest pact. I have no way to remedy this. I just have to live with it and hope I can protect them. My daughter and her little sister. That he killed someone. He was a friend of mine that had taken some bad choices in life and was at that time living on the street having a heroin addiction, and a girlfriend with the same problematic lifestyle. She supported them by prostituting herself, however there was some guy who liked her and tried to rape her. My friend got mad and deliberately gave him a bad fix. He told me he knew that the guy would die from that injection, and he was watching the whole time until he died. He said it was one of the most incredible, mixed feelings situations he have ever experienced. I'm in the same class with these twins. They're originally from Argentina but they're studying here in Canada. One time someone asked them if they were planning on becoming Canadian citizens after they graduated. Instantly, the girl says no. Here in Canada incest between siblings is against the law. Her brother just nodded along and added a yup. At the end. They told us that they first started when they were 10, their parents know about it and disapprove, but they can't really do anything about it because it's not illegal. And they even kissed to prove they weren't joking. They were completely nonchalant about it too, as if it was the most normal thing in the world. The brother once showed us a picture of his piss after a brutal boxing match. It looked like coke mixed with piss. He said he wanted to drink some of it to see what his kidney remnants tasted like. And worst of all, he admitted that he is a seed box but he doesn't seed his torrents. A co-worker, we'll call her Ann, told me a story about her softball coach when she was in high school. Her dad was abusive and her mom took her and ran when she was young, so her father was not in the picture. Her softball coach had become a kind of father figure to her and she spent a lot of time with him. One of the girls on the team disappeared and her parents assumed she had run away with her boyfriend since she was a troubled girl, and the boyfriend was bad news. One day Ann rode to practice with her coach and when they were finished with practice, she grabbed his keys and was going to put her bag in his trunk because she was embarrassed about smelly clothes in her bag. When she opened his trunk she found the dead naked body of her teammate in his trunk. She didn't say anything and quit softball and took up drugs and fighting a lot. The coach eventually got caught and went to jail. She was mostly off drugs by the time I met her, but she was definitely not functional. She was still drinking and fighting a lot. It was sad. My former roommate confessed that when he was angry he would buy hamsters to throw them at walls. He also admitted that he never took no for an answer in sex. He told me this straight-faced while we were drinking a beer. He showed no remorse. He also met girls off Tinder and tried everything to get them to have sex. He had no shame. He would straight up beg if necessary. He never wore condoms and would keep trying when they said no. I am pretty sure he is capable of rape and murder. He told me some other things too and it seems like he is addicted to sex. He is also an alcoholic. After I got out of there I never contacted him again. Pretty sure he was a psychopath. Worked a warehouse job once. A coworker told me that when she was a kid she decapitated a puppy with a shovel. Said she didn't know back then that she needed medication. A friend confessed to me 10 years ago that someone raped his sister. So he found the guy and killed him. Friend never heard anything about it. Still freaks me out to this day that it was that easy. I guess it's not a confession really, but some guys once told me the most messed up thing as if it was no big deal. I grew up in the military. When I was in high school we moved across the country to a house that was in a development not far from the base. I made new friends as kids do, and one day I was running around the neighborhood with a few other teens. This was long before the internet. A few of the guys decide they're going to go to this other guy's house and hang out. They ask if I wanna come and the conversation goes like this. Hey, you want a BJ? What? A BJ? Gary's sister's cute and she'll blow anybody. If she likes you she'll let you F her too. Sure. 15-year-old virgin me is really starting to like it here. We get to Gary's house and knock on the door. Gary answers and invites us in. The other guys mention that I want a BJ, teasing and giving me a hard time like teen boys do. We walk into the living room and there's Gary's dad on the couch with his pants around his ankles and this little girl giving him a BJ. And Gary tells me she'll take care of me when she's done and gives me this smile like. It still creeps me the hell out thinking about it now almost 30 years later. This girl is young. Like very young. I found out later that she was 9. All previous excitement drains out of me as I watch what's unfolding. The grown-up on the couch smiles and greets us, the other boys all watching with us. Look, that stuck with me. It took me maybe a minute to make an excuse and get out of there. I went home and just kind of sat there in shock for a while. Eventually a couple of the guys knocked on my door and just wanted to hang out. They asked me if I was okay and basically wanted to make sure I wasn't a snitch. My dad and stepmom came home from work later, both military, and at dinner they could tell something was off. I mean seriously, that was the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. It doesn't take long for me to spill the entire thing to my dad. He calls the cops and I ended up having to talk to the police several times. Gary and his dad got arrested along with 2 other neighborhood kids and a grown-up guy I had never met. I don't know what happened with the girl, I never saw her again. We lived there for 1 school year before moving several miles away to another school district. That year was hell for me. I got hell from the other kids and got the hell beat out of me a couple times for being a rat. Thanks for listening to Radio TTS. Hit the subscribe button and activate the notification bell for more disturbing stories of Reddit's dark corners. Let us know in the comments what you think about these stories. And consider to support Radio TTS affiliate program by buying your stuff via the link down in the description.